Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Dr. Patricia Mills. I'm a medical doctor, holistic medical doctor, functional medicine practitioner, and passionate advocate for your health. And today, I wanted to really focus in on a very important topic that I feel is, for many people, the missing ingredient for achieving their health goals. And what that is the mindset around your health journey, okay? And the mindset around your health goal, because many of us are living in a problem oriented health goal. And what we need to do is know how to shift into a solution oriented health goal. And there's actually, this title was going to be going to be called "The Secret of the Mindset to Manifest Your Vibrant Health." And really, what I'm going to call it is the science to manifest your vibrant health, and the science to manifest your health's desire. And you can replace health's desire with heart's desire, because you can use this technique, by the way, for anything that you want to accomplish in your life. But because we're here in a health focused group, I want to make sure that you get what you want out of it in terms of a health perspective. Okay, so let me just adjust the camera here a little bit, because I can see that it's a little bit hard to see me. Okay, perfect. All right, there we go. So let me get you founded in what this means to have the right mindset. So first I need to introduce you to some scientific principles around the mind, okay? And we're going to be pulling on like amazing cutting edge science, as well as concepts from quantum physics. Now, I am not a quantum physics expert by any means. However, there are foundational principles of quantum physics that I'm familiar with, and when I read about quantum physics and I see the cutting edge science, and I read about, there's lots of books in this space, like mindset books, and some of them cross into the spiritual world and some of them into the scientific. And I really like to get things where everything gets into the overlap, the intersection. So we want to create a science and manifestation approach that is founded in cutting edge science, quantum physics, which is cutting edge science, and is in alignment with what has been taught over decades of people going into the space, so that it's like, okay, when you start to read those books on manifesting, you can start to see where those threads of truth are being picked up, right? So first, let me introduce you to your mind, right? Because we're talking about mindset. You need to understand your mind. And what we know for a fact is that in your brain are these neural networks. So neurons that transmit electricity as their form of communication. And then when the energy is within the neuron is like literally like an electrical, it's like a cable that's transmitting electricity. And we have neurons inside of our brain, and then those neurons go out into our spinal cord, and then they go out into our arms and our legs. And each segment of neurons, so if you think of one neuron and then it connects to another neuron and another neuron, then that neuron ends up going out to the arm or to the gut or to the liver, to the ovaries. The way that each neuron communicates with each other is through chemicals, through chemistry. So the electrical energy is converted into chemical information. And that chemistry in the body affects the functioning of the body, okay? And then there's the chemistry of good health, and then there's the chemistry of disease, okay? So how can we influence chemistry of good health and the chemistry of disease? Because you want to basically get your body in alignment with health and and away from disease, right? Because every subject has two subjects, really. So on the subject of health, we have health and we have lack of health, right? So you want to be orienting yourself towards health and away from lack of health, because that's what disease is, really, is a lack of health, okay? And so getting back up into the brain, you have your neural networks. Now, what's really interesting is that we can measure the pattern of electricity in the brain through electrodes, and this is called the electroencephalography, EEG. And neurologists and neurosurgeons use this to map the electrical activity in the brain. And specifically in medicine, they use that for things like seizure activity. So one part of the brain is like the neural networks are overfiring and they discharge. And if you're wondering where is that discharge, or is there actually a seizure activity happening, they'll put those electrodes on your head and they will monitor you over time to see what is the electrical patterns. Okay. What's really cool is that there's a device called the magnetoencephalography, so the MEG. And what that is that it's a machine that has just recently been developed for clinical use, in the sense that in some centers in the world they have this, but it's mostly being used in research, where they can put a cap on your head and they can measure the magnetic activity of your brain. Why? Because electricity, when it flows, when it kind of has its waveform, it emits magnetic waves as well. So it's electromagnetic waves, because the work of the energy, the electricity, energy is work. The electricity, as it moves, creates energy, and that energy emanates as magnetic waves. So what's really cool is that we are like emanating magnetic waves, and the research instruments that they're using can be so sensitive sometimes that even if the cap is not right on the head, it's just like around the head, like not even touching the head, it can pick up those electromagnetic waves, which is crazy, which means that you are like emanating your thoughts. Okay, you're emanating your thoughts. So as you move throughout the day and you're thinking certain thoughts, that there's a certain amount of that energy that's actually being transmitted beyond your skin, beyond your physical boundaries, which is so cool when you think about it, right? And when you read those self-development books and like those spiritual books and like those books that are like, okay, the secret to manifestation, what they talk about is that the common thread between all of those books is that your like attracts like. So if you are in a good mood, you have a certain pattern of thoughts associated with that mood, right? And if you're in a bad mood, you have a certain pattern of thoughts associated with that mood. Or in other words, if you have a certain pattern of thoughts, you're going to generate good mood. And if you have another pattern of thoughts, you're going to generate bad mood. And a belief is a certain pattern of thoughts. So if you're going throughout the day and you believe that it's a great day, everything's going your way, everything's happening in your favor, isn't it amazing how wonderful this world is? That's a belief system that is generating a certain pattern of thoughts that generates a certain good mood. And with that pattern of thoughts, it generates a certain electrical activity, which generates a certain magnetic activity, which will be different than the electromagnetic energy activity that is generated with the belief system that generates pattern of thoughts that generates a bad mood. So if you're going around in your day and you're like, man, like this is so terrible, everything in this world is going wrong, everything is so stressful, my life is just not working out for me, why is everything happening to me? My health is really poor, all of these thoughts, that generates a certain signature, a certain kind of electromagnetic activity, and that generates a bad mood. So we talked about the electromagnetic difference between positive belief systems with positive thoughts versus negative belief systems with negative thoughts. And by the way, did you know that electromagnetic activity is coupled with chemical activity that is also completely different depending on those thoughts? So for example, in the feel-good thoughts, okay, that generates the release of certain chemicals, like as hormones, right? We all know what hormones are. If you don't know, hormones are little molecules that are released by tissues in the body, and like they squirt it out, and those molecules travel through the body and connect to other parts of the body and cause a chemical reaction in that other part of the body. And certain hormones have a more positive effect on our body than other hormones. Now, all hormones are necessary. That's why they exist. It's not like Mother Nature was like, ha ha ha, we're going to give you bad hormones in your body. No, they're all necessary, but you want them to be harmoniously balanced with each other. You want to have the right kind of good hormones at the right time and the right kind of stress hormones when you need them. So when you are running away from a tiger, or someone's like, has a gun to your head, God forbid, you want to have like a stress hormone pattern where it activates you and it gets you angry enough and like powerful enough that you take action and you either run away or you confront the issue, right? There are times in your life when you need that. But if you are always activating that chemistry, that can be very damaging for the body. So the positive belief system with the certain thought patterns then create this electromagnetic signature, this energy that then has this chemistry in the body. That chemistry in the good feeling is like, for example, the hormone oxytocin. Oxytocin is like the unconditional love hormone. It's the hormone that's released when you're being held and cuddled by your partner, your longtime partner, or maybe not your longtime partner, but it's beyond the lust phase. It's into like the contentment, the happiness phase. Maybe that happens very quickly for some people. It's the hormone that's released when you're holding your newborn baby or another person's baby that you're feeling a connection with, and it's the hormone that's released when you are in love with yourself, when you self-love. That's the hormone, okay? Whereas in the negative belief system, the negative thought patterns, the hormones that are released with that are things like cortisol and adrenaline. Okay, again, you need those hormones if you're going to do like a quick sprint. You need quick adrenaline. But if you are living with a belief system and a thought pattern that is constantly triggering the activation and release of those hormones, basically you're living in a stress reaction most of the time, which in these days is very easy to find yourself in. That chemistry is very damaging for the body. For example, cortisol, right? If you Google in the research library online, which is called PubMed, and you Google hypercortisol, right? Hypercortisolemia, which means you have high levels of cortisol all the time. What the research shows that people who have high levels of cortisol all the time, over time, if it's like, very constant, almost unrelenting, they get diabetes, they get cancer, they get dementia, they get Alzheimer's. Okay, why? Because it's a very kind of like, you can almost think of it like acid to the tissues. It's very damaging to the tissues. It's like acidic, it's like not good. That's a simplification, but basically what it's doing is like eating away at the tissues and getting into the body organs and cells and blocking its function. Because when you're running away from the tiger, which is what that hormone was meant for, those hormones were meant for in terms of being released every now and then, other than in the morning. In the morning, you do have a natural rise in those hormones to just get out of bed, but then it should go down for the rest of the day. But when you, for example, are running away from a tiger, let's say, and the reason I keep alluding to that is because these hormones were in place historically, like thousands and thousands of years ago, in order for that to be possible for for like a tiger to show up and you be able to run away. When you're running away from something, whether it's like in your mind, like you're so scared of something that's happening in the world or to yourself or in your environment, your body needs to be ready to run, which means it needs to shut down the digestive system. It needs to stop its rejuvenation and repair, because it needs to marshal all of its energies towards that fight or flight system. And some people freeze. It's like fight, flight, or freeze, like a deer caught in the headlights, and you just get numb and you numb yourself out. That is like, feels like an emptiness inside, but it requires a lot of energy, because your body's like storing the energy for that moment when it needs to finally like get out of that situation, right? So the energy gets diverted from your organs of like digestion and repair and sleep, deep sleep, and diverted towards like your muscle tissues and those sorts of things. And over time, that creates a lot of like muscle tension and stress, right? Like the jaw, the neck, the back, the lower back, and then your organs aren't functioning properly. So overall, it's a terrible cascade of events if you are having a pattern of thoughts that are in making you feel bad versus having a pattern of thoughts that make you feel good. And you could turn around and say, well, Dr. Patricia, it's really hard to feel good these days. There are a lot of things happening in this world, and I can't just ignore what's happening on the news and what's happening around us and in other countries. And what I would say to you is that how you react inside of your body will not help those people and will not help the situation. In fact, it will harm them, because when you hurt your health through these thought patterns, you are in the end left with very little that is in order for you to help others. So in other words, you drain your cup so that you're now trying to help others with it from an empty cup situation, versus filling your cup to the point where you even get an overflow of abundance, an overflow of health, an overflow of energy available. And then with that overflow of available energy, then you can take action, if action is possible. Sometimes action is not possible, but oftentimes action can be possible. But if you're taking action from an empty cup, over time, you're going to suffer, and then you're going to get so sick that you literally can't help those around you anymore. Right? And then what good are you to society? You're just no good to society. So I will never give you a problem without a solution, because I'm a solution-oriented person. So what is the solution? The point at which you have conscious control is your thoughts. And you will know if your thoughts are in alignment with good health, with the chemistry of good health, or in alignment with the chemistry of bad health, based on your emotions. In other words, are you feeling bad? So you might give it a name, like you might give it like anger, frustration, sadness, upset, guilt, shame, but you don't even have to give it a name. You know, a negative emotion is a negative emotion. A positive emotion is a positive emotion. If your thoughts are in alignment with the chemistry of good health, you're going to have positive emotions within your body. What does that feel like? So negative emotions usually feel like like tenseness and a lot of turbulence inside, constriction, butterflies in your tummy, tightness in the throat, tightness in the jaw, the back, the neck. Like it's a real body experience of negative thoughts. Okay, because sometimes you're not aware that you're having negative thoughts. So you can either choose to be aware of your thoughts, or aware of your emotions, or aware of both. That's the ideal. If you're aware of both your thoughts and your emotions, and they're in alignment. And if you're having negative thoughts that are giving you negative emotions, you know you're hurting your health. If you're having positive thoughts and you're having positive emotions, you know you're supporting your health. Okay? So, for example, it really becomes a moment to moment exercise. So let's say you're like, okay, you're in the you happen to be watching the news. By the way, I do think that there is a role these days to be very careful with how you watch the news. Don't watch it while you're eating. Don't watch it before you go to bed. Don't watch it like after 4 o'clock at night so you don't overactivate yourself. And maybe don't watch the sensationalist news. Maybe get an app that delivers you just factual accounts of the information without. So, for example, there's a difference between saying, so-and-so was forced to disclose this about themselves, versus so-and-so was requested. There was a requirement, a mandate was passed that this was to occur, versus this was forced upon people. It's the same event, but the wording, the language is very activating and very inflammatory, right? So find an app or some kind of news delivery service that just delivers the goods, the content straight up. None of that like amplification with words, just factual, okay? This is for people who want to stay up to date with the news. Some people might even say, I'm in a place right now where there's literally nothing I can do to help this situation, so I need to focus inwards and get myself really healthy, really good, so like really vibrant health, so that I can then turn around to the world and still avoiding those like very sensationalist news stories, be very attuned with what's the factual reality of what's going on, and then saying, okay, what action can I take? What action can I take? If I can't take an action, then I'm going to let it go, because holding on to it is not helpful to anyone, right? So then you might say, well, what does that look like, Dr. Patricia? I'd be like, well, let's say that you listen to something on the news about something really terrible that's going on in another world, and you in another part of the world, right? It could be related to COVID, could be related to war, could be related to injustice, could be related to inequities, all that kind of stuff. And so, again, every subject has two sides to it, right? There's the negative side to it and the positive side to it. So there's inequality, and we recognize there's inequality because there is equality. In order to recognize that there's inequality, in order to recognize that there's war, it's because there exists peace, right? So instead of focusing on the war, focus on the peace, focus on the other side. So shift your thought from the negative to the positive aspect of that situation. So you might say, oh my goodness, like I'm just so grateful that where I am there is peace. I'm so grateful that in my family there is peace. I'm so grateful that most of the world is in alignment with peace, which is why there is so much outrage, right? Or I'm so grateful that within my family there is health. I'm so grateful that within my body there is health. I'm so grateful that there are so many opportunities to get healthy out there, so many resources for people who want to become healthy. So grateful for that, right? So that's where you have to really work at it. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying that it's necessary if your goal is vibrant health and filling your cup till it spilleth over, and you're able to then turn around and help people in your life. And there is sometimes a period where you have to be selfish. Do I preach selfishness? Absolutely. Because without selfishness, over time, there will be nothing for you to give, right? So there are periods of time in our lives where we have to be selfish in order to replenish ourselves so that we can be of service to society and to others and to our family, to our children, to our partners, our friends, our community, and the world. Okay? So if you're feeling drained, if you're feeling unhealthy, if you're feeling negative, if you're feeling pulled down by the world's events, I give you full permission to be totally selfish and focus inward on healing yourself, on getting that healthy chemistry going on, okay? And there's moment to moment things you can do about that. Now, remember that I said that thoughts are like magnetic. Well, you can also, and here's the last little secret, and I'll have to dive into this more in future like workshops or offerings or that kind of thing, because it's not something you can explain in a very short amount of time, but you can, the difference between a piece of metal and a magnet is that the atoms in the magnet are all aligned in one direction, so they exert a force which attracts things to it, right? Well, I explained earlier, right, in this talk that you have a magnetic force in your brain, and if you have your thoughts aligned towards something like a purpose or a goal, you can create a force. And this is me taking the cutting edge science with the quantum physics and making a theory out of it. Because what is quantum physics? Quantum physics is that we all live in a quantum field, which means that everything is energy. Even where there's empty space, there's a certain kind of energy. It's just not visible to the naked eye, or we can't sense it. But there is an energy, and some people call it dark matter in space, but it's matter, it's energy, okay? And we are creating this electromagnetic wave, and when we align our thoughts into a certain direction, we can attract things to ourselves through that magnetic power. That is my belief. That is what I have seen. That is what I have witnessed in my life. That is what I see happening in other people's lives when they adopt this way of thinking, okay? And if you are not aware of this power of this way of using your thoughts, you might be unconsciously, like accidentally creating your reality. Like you might be thinking about war and all of a sudden war comes to you. You might be thinking about disease and all of a sudden disease comes to you, right? You don't want that. So what do you want to attract into your life? You want to attract health, right? You want to attract peace, right? So your thoughts have to be thoughts of peace. Your thoughts have to be thoughts of health. So I invite you to every night when you're going to bed, have some minutes in your bed where you lie down in bed and you think thoughts of health, and you think to yourself, first focus on the parts of your body that you're really grateful for, like how healthy they are. Like, oh, my hands are so comfortable, my feet are so comfortable. My head is feeling so good against this pillow. My body's feeling so comforted by this blanket. This bed is so soft, right? And then you almost go into like a workshop mode in your mind where you start to create in your mind, what is your ideal health? And what you don't want to do is think the thoughts of things you don't want to attract to them. So for example, let's say you're on blood pressure medications and you want to be off of blood pressure medications. Well, what you want to say is, I have naturally healthy blood pressure, okay? You don't want to say, I'm off of my medications, because that has the word medications in it. Like, it's that specific. Like, you have to only use positive wording and thoughts. And you don't want to say, for example, I don't want to be overweight, or I want to lose weight. Okay. What you want to say is, I want to be at my ideal weight effortlessly and forever. Do you see the difference? So again, the two subjects of weight of weight loss is to be at your ideal weight and to have to lose weight, right? So you want to go to the positives aspect of being. And then you want to have that in your mind. Like, you have to say, okay, I'm at my ideal weight. You imagine yourself, you visualize yourself. That's where visualization comes in. So you visualize yourself at this ideal weight, and you imagine yourself in it, and you start to generate the emotions of it, which is the chemistry. So now you're creating the chemistry of ideal weight in your body, because your thoughts are in alignment with ideal weight, right? That creates the chemistry of ideal weight, that creates the magnetism of ideal weight, and you start to attract ideal weight into your life, and you start to create the chemistry of ideal weight in your body. And if you can harness that emotion, like, what does it feel like to be an ideal weight? It could be a feeling of lightness, of relief, of happiness, of joy, ecstasy, bliss. What does that feel like to you? Go to bed, fall asleep in that emotion. I use the example of weight. It could be something else. It could be that you're battling cancer, you have problems with your skin, or you have problems with other things in your life, that could be like your menstruation, or your fibroids, or your endometriosis, or your thyroid, right? But whatever it is for you, you picture what it would be like to achieve that health, to be in that state of vibrant health. Fall asleep in the emotions. The emotions is a key. You have to bathe yourself in these emotions. And then the next day when you wake up, as soon as your mind starts to functioning again, do that again. Get yourself in the thoughts. Get yourself in the chemistry of those thoughts. Get yourself in the emotion of those thoughts. And as often as you can through the day, when you catch yourself having negative thoughts or negative emotions, pull yourself into the positive thoughts, positive emotions. And sometimes you can't see the positive aspect of that situation. Like, yes, if children are being killed, in some war, for example, you might say, like, I just can't see the positive aspect of that. And what I would say is, then look for anything positive. Anything positive. And sometimes it might even be putting on a funny movie, or listening to a funny podcast, or watching a funny show. In these days, we should not be watching negative shows or negative movies, or movies about death and destruction. Like, we do not need to attract more of that in our life, or create the chemistry of that in our body, because we are very we're very emotional people, and our emotions will mirror that which we see. And so you don't want to be watching a negative movie, or watching a negative news show that's very sensationalist, and having that negative emotions flowing through your tissues. If your goal is vibrant health, if your goal is martyrdom, if you want to martyr yourself to the events of the world, then that's not what you're going to do. You're going to stay in the negative thoughts. But that's martyrdom in this situation is not helpful for the world. The world needs you vibrant and just full of health, full of energy, full of that amazing capacity of all of the organs to be functioning, complete harmony, everything just allowing you to fall asleep into deep, rejuvenating sleep very quickly, and wake up with full of vibrant energy, being strong and flexible and capable, being able to have boundless energy for your whole day, and then at night you just drop off into deep sleep again, right? Your digestion functioning optimally, like the perfect poops every day, right? That is what you deserve. That is what you need. And the world needs you to be in that state, because in that state you are powerful. And you will affect change, the change that you want to see in this world. So you have to be the change that you want to see in this world. Okay? So I hope you found this helpful. I hope that this resonated with you on some level. Take what serves you. Okay? If this isn't where you're at, that's okay. That's totally okay. I honor that. And the other aspect of this is the science of allow others around you to be where they're at. Don't feel like they need to do what you're doing. You do you. You do you. You focus on yourself. Take your focus off of other people's problems. Take your focus off of other people's health issues. Allow them to live their life experience, and inspire them them through your action, not through your words. Inspire them through your actions. Inspire them through your health, through your vibrant health. That's how you're going to make a change in the people around you. Okay? So I hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to the comments. If there are any afterwards, please put comments. Let me know if there's anything more that you want me to go deeper into on this. I really think this is the missing piece for a lot of people who, some people don't know what they need to do to get healthy, and some people do and yet can't find the health that they want, that they desire. Is because they're focusing on the problem and not the solution. So you have to change your thoughts, shift your emotions, be in alignment with what you desire, and watch the magic happen. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, or night, depending on when you catch this. Bye.